Most people have heard of World War I and World War II, but there's another war just as violent, just as transformative that barely gets mentioned. It started in 1950, ended in a stalemate, killed millions, and shaped the future of Asia for generations. This is the story of the Korean War, a war that technically never ended. Let's go back to 1945. After decades under brutal Japanese colonial rule, Korea was finally free. But instead of celebrating its independence as one united country, it was split in half by two superpowers right along the 38th parallel. The North was occupied by the Soviet Union, the South by the United States. What was meant to be a temporary division quickly turned permanent as Cold War tensions exploded. By 1948, two governments had formed. In the North, a communist regime led by Kim Il-sung, backed by Stalin's Soviet Union. In the South, an anti-communist government led by Syngman Rhee, supported by the U.S. Both leaders claimed to be the rightful ruler of all Korea. Then, on the morning of June 25, 1950, North Korea launched a surprise invasion. Over 75,000 North Korean soldiers stormed across the 38th parallel. They captured Seoul within 3 days. South Korean forces were caught off guard and quickly overwhelmed. It looked like the entire Korean peninsula would fall to the north, but the United States and the United Nations responded swiftly. President Truman believed that if communism spread in Korea, it could spread throughout Asia. The U.S. convinced the UN to send troops. Within weeks, soldiers from 16 countries joined the fight, most of them American. By August 1950, South Korean and United States forces were pushed back into a small corner in the southeast known as the Pusan Perimeter. Things looked grim, but then came a bold counterattack. On September 15th, General Douglas MacArthur launched a surprise amphibious landing at Inchon behind enemy lines. It was a massive gamble, but it worked. North Korean supply lines were cut, and within weeks, the UN forces had recaptured Seoul and driven the invaders back across the border. But the war didn't stop there. The United States pushed into North Korea, determined to reunify the country under the South. They advanced all the way to the Yalu River, the border with China. That's when everything changed. China, alarmed by the advancing United States forces, entered the war. In October 1950, hundreds of thousands of Chinese soldiers known as the People's Volunteer Army flooded into Korea. The United States troops were caught off guard. They were forced into a desperate retreat. Seoul changed hands again. The war had become even bloodier. For the next 2 years, the front lines barely moved. Both sides dug trenches. It became a grinding war of attrition, much like World War I. The mountainous terrain and freezing temperatures made every inch of progress costly. Soldiers fought in horrific conditions: snowstorms, hunger, disease. Civilians suffered even more. Entire cities were destroyed. Families were torn apart. By 1953, both sides were exhausted. Negotiations dragged on for months. Finally, on July 27, 1953, an armistice was signed. It wasn't a peace treaty, just a ceasefire. Korea remained divided just as it had been before. A heavily fortified strip of land, the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, was established along the 38th parallel. It remains one of the most dangerous borders in the world. Default text. The war killed over 5 million people, more than half of them civilians. Over 36,000 American troops died. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese and North Korean soldiers were lost. Millions of Koreans were left homeless, wounded, or separated from their families, many still divided to this day. And yet, the Korean War is often called the Forgotten War. It didn't end with a clear victory. It didn't redraw world maps, but its legacy is massive. It was the first major military clash of the Cold War, the first time American and Chinese troops fought each other. It cemented the division of Korea. It led to decades of U.S. military presence in South Korea. It turned North Korea into one of the most isolated and militarized countries in the world. Today, over 70 years later, North and South Korea are still technically at war. The Korean Peninsula remains one of the tensest flashpoints on Earth. Nuclear weapons, missile tests, sanctions, these are all direct consequences of a war that started in 1950 and never officially ended. During World War I, British soldiers used fake trees as spy towers. They built hollow metal trees that looked like real ones from afar. Inside, a soldier could climb up and secretly observe enemy movements through tiny peepholes. They'd sneak them in at night, replacing real trees with these clever fakes. Thank you for watching. For more captivating historical content, please show your support subscribing to our channel.